But we have to understand it's even more complex than that. We have to deal with human emotions and people and politics. And so, the person running a testing program in an organization, I think has a much bigger challenge than the person running the analytics practice. And if we say that being an analyst is hard and you have to piss people off, I think optimization is even that much more difficult. They have
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a roundtable discussion covering a wide variety of topics from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Your hosts, Jason Thompson, John Naran, Jen Coons, and myself, Jim Driscoll, all live in different areas of the world, but work together in the same company. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others.
I made one mistake with the nuts, John.
I'm eating them right now.
Yeah, well,
What was your mistake with the nuts?
there is a item in there that is not a nut.
Oh yeah, which item are you talking about?
It's chili? A skinny red chili of death.
Oh yeah, you ate the chili.
I didn't realize it. Because I would grab a handful and just throw it in my mouth, and then I'm like, what? And my whole face just like started tingling, and I was sweating. I'm like, what did I just eat? Oh, other than that, they're very fantastic, and they have just the right amount of spice to them. But the pepper alone was probably not a good idea for me to eat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you learn the hard way.
Yes, like they're delicious though. It's got a really strong like kaffir lime leaf or something to it. It's very Thai tasting.
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious.
Indeed.
They're gonna go fast though. I think it's like half gone. I don't know if that's a bad
thing. and you just got them what, on Monday?
I just got them yesterday.
Oh wow, okay.
I think it was yesterday, right? Yeah, I think it was yesterday they showed up. Yeah.
Well, you can always have a refill.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, I had to break into everything yesterday. I had to sample the Thai, like mostly cashews. Very delicious. And then I had to brew myself a cup of coffee with the beans. So it was both very tasty. So thank you for sending that over.
Oh, no problem. All right, Jim, how are you going to segue this?
Yeah, segue that.
Give me a second here. Oh, okay. So, Jason, you're talking about the chili, and you're just, you're not completely conscious of, what you're, grabbing as you're doing it.
Oh man, that's a good one.
So what? So it's not a very smooth segue, but either way. So you're talking about just you accidentally ate the chilies. You're taking handfuls of the nuts. You're not completely conscious of what you're grabbing. So what I want to talk today about, and right now I have a working title of "You take your bracket seriously. Why don't you take your testing program seriously?" So March Madness, the NCAA tournament, is right around the corner. So very, very soon, you're going to see many people spending a great deal of time putting their tournament brackets together. And I know at least two people that put together multiple versions of it, to see which one really plays out. But, on the flip side, I know we've seen it time and time again where people will implement a testing platform, whether it's an Optimizely, a Test and Target, or what now it's just called.
No, Target. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So Adobe Target, let me correct myself. That's one old name I still subconsciously just default to. But anyway, so they'll implement an Optimizely or an Adobe Target. But then with that, they'll just throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. And again, just randomly putting stuff together and see how it works. So why does it feel like some of these people will spend more time and effort on their tournament bracket than their testing program? And I mean, there's more than just the, well, let's get the testing program up. It's the hypothesizing, it's the planning out of the various tests that you want to perform. There's no planning component, there's no deep analysis, and the results show. So what do you do to convince people that to get the most out of their testing program, you can't just fly by the seat of your pants and see what happens? And how do you deal with, say, the comeback that, aren't testing programs supposed to let you move rapidly so you can learn?
Wait, what happened to Jim?
No, I was done. I just
Oh,
muted myself.
that created an awkward pause. I was reading
Sorry.
one of the reviews on the podcast, and it said that there's some really awkward pauses in the conversations, and it's super uncomfortable. I laughed because
Really?
I've heard from other people who are like, I love that the conversation feels real and it's not overly edited. So
Yeah.
we can't
And I
please
mean, like,
everybody, and I don't know what to tell
yeah.
you.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like, when there is like the real pause, like, when somebody says something, there's no immediate return. I do cut out the pauses. Like, all right,
I think it's
good to
okay.
know.
It's a natural part of conversation, right?
Yeah,
In this instance, I really thought we had a technical problem. Oh,
no.
okay.
We're not professional broadcasters.
No. Well, at least not yet. We're working there.
We're getting there. We're getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once we get that studio belt out, then we'll take it to another level. Man, there's lots of different directions we could take this. John, sounds like you want to jump in.
Yeah, I need to think about how to even organize my thoughts, because obviously, yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot of um these what's like situations or organizations that are in various stages of maturity on the optimization side, and I think we've all dealt with a lot of it client side potentially in the past as well. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons, I think, why it may seem discouraging a lot of times, optimization programs, and I'm just trying to think about how to even organize my thoughts. But I think at the like probably the common theme of what I'm thinking around is that optimization is a lot more difficult and complicated than many organizations, generally speaking, uh, think that it is when they initially sign on to wanting to approach optimization. And I think part of that is the way that a lot of the platforms and tools advertise, or market or position their optimization platforms, that it's very easy. You won't need any developers. A marketer could just run tests on their own. And I think all of that is actually very bad to some degree, um, in the sense that, yes, it's technically true, but that's not really how you would ever run an actual optimization program, just having a bunch of people randomly throw up tests. Because well-run optimization programs, there's a lot more involved, which I can go into, but maybe I'll take a step back for a second to see if you agree with that.
I absolutely agree, and there's many different kind of things I was thinking about, but I think it's Optimizely's fault. I don't, and not specifically Optimizely, but I think they did a
Is this podcast
fantastic.
sponsored by Adobe now? No, I'm just kidding.
No,
Just kidding.
I mean we're not sponsored at all, but if anyone wants to step in and sponsor, we can get that sweet podcast money, and we can really up our game and cut out all of the awkward pauses. So
And if it's
Adobe,
Optimizely, we'll edit your messaging.
Optimizely, yeah, come on. No, we can't be bought. We're just gonna spit it like it is. But I think you're right. Testing is really really hard. If Eric Peterson said that analytics is really really hard, and I believe he's right. I think testing is even that much more difficult. It's just really really complex to do, and I think it's important that we separate out what we call digital, kind of this digital space, and what we refer to a lot of times as digital analytics from the broader world. Because obviously, if you look at scientific testing, there's a whole other level. If you look at testing that was done by other teams within business organizations that were not digital at one point in time, it was much more rigorous and structured, just because the people running those tests typically came from a more scientific or statistics background. And honestly, my first analytics job when I left Omniture, that was the thought of the people there, is they thought, because they had been told that, oh, we're hiring a guy to come in and help build our optimization program. And in their mind, they're like, oh, we're hiring like some statistics PhD guy that's going to be like really geeky and hard to talk to. And then I got there and they're like, wait a minute, that's not who we hired at all. But that's who used to do testing. And I think that Optimizely really, really was a forerunner in breaking that mold. And sure, you had Test and Target back in the day, which was actually a acquisition by Omniture very, very early on of Offermatica. And Offermatica was a really well built out, solid tool built on sound statistical logic and reasoning and reporting. And so it was a little bit more cumbersome to use. And Optimizely came along and said, hey, we can make this easy. We can make this approachable by the digital marketer. And they did such a fantastic job of stealing market share. It forced a reaction from everyone else in the field, and we saw Adobe react to that. And if you look at the progression of Test and Target to Target over the years, it has become more like Optimizely than anything else. And I think that was a direct response to Adobe losing business to Optimizely, because they had done such a fantastic job of making this really, really difficult thing approachable by the marketing organizations. However, I think a very, very serious drawback of that is that it just further helped gloss over um, how really difficult this is, and it really helped to almost hide the fact that there's a lot of rigor that needs to go into testing to do it right. And we're really talking about the output. We're really talking about when you call winners and when you decide that version B beat version A. But I think what Jim is queuing up is even larger than that. That just the ideation process is really, really difficult. And I think that probably leads you down a different path. And I would probably put my blame on the CRO industry. They're slick. You talk to some of these CRO shops and they're like really well polished, and their presentation, you can tell they come um, from a background where presentation and how things look is really, really high on the list, and they tell a really, really good story. But the problem with most CRO agencies is they've got this playbook that says, okay, client X, you're in retail, so here's the things that you need to test. We test button color. If we test add to cart placement, and all of these things may be important. But what we're lacking is we have the data, we have the behavioral data there to help inform some of this ideation. Why are we cutting that out of the process? And again, I think it comes down to the marketer wanted something super easy to use, something that was approachable. And lots of these organizations, and I'm going to give Matt Gershoff, the CEO over at Conductrix, credit for the term, but I saw him refer to it as theater. A lot of these companies are doing testing for the theater of it, and so you have these companies that set these kind of crazy goals to say, our goals to run X number of tests concurrently and Y number of tests a quarter, and you don't hear anything about what the actual end results and the value of those tests are. It's just the appearance of running an optimization campaign. And that's where a Target, an Optimizely, a visual website optimizer comes into play, because those tools do make it very easy to run lots of tests very, very quickly. Sorry, I was
Well,
all over the place in that response.
yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the whole button color test, because that's kind of a thorn in my side, I feel like. And it was kind of partly what I was thinking about when I mentioned how a lot of platforms position themselves as being overly simplified. Because I think this idea of testing a button color is so prominent throughout anyone who wants to do testing. Like, they've probably either read a white paper, saw an example, saw a demo of a tool, and it's always like changing the button color. Look how easy it is to change the button color. And then everyone starts their testing program thinking that they can make such a simple change like that and expect like a 300% increase in conversion that will directly relate to revenue. And it's just not really the reality. I mean, perhaps your default button color is really horrible and you do run that test and there's an improvement, but in most cases that only gets you so far, from what I've seen. Same thing with, testing two different landing pages. That's a little bit more common of a use case, but really when you're getting deep into optimization, the impactful tests are grossly more complicated than that, changing entire um, conversion flows, segmenting users and using, personalization tactics to increase their lifetime value, or their, or whatever, they're optimizing their entire flows. um, I'm speaking very generally, but the bottom line is, like, a lot of these tests are a lot more complicated than people would think about. So you can only brainstorm so many, let's change the size of the font or the background color so many times, and it just feels like, they run some of those tests and they don't have any impact, and then testing can quickly lose steam unless it's like kind of, um, the education around what you really need to be doing is there at the organization.
Yeah, and I, I'm with you, and I think if you go out there and you Google like button color, you'll probably find hundreds, if not thousands, of articles and research on what the most popular button color is for high converting websites. And it is a very easy case study to attach to and story to tell. So if I'm a
Hmm.
vendor and if I'm selling a testing platform, that's a really easy use case for me to highlight and show. And so that kind of perpetuates. And in some cases it may very well be true, right? But the essence of testing isn't just saying, okay, well, this case study provided to me by Visual Website Optimizer said that if I have a blue button instead of a yellow button, I'm going to convert higher. So that's what I'm going to test. Really misses the point, because what we need to understand is how that impacts our target audience, right? Our target population. That's really what it comes down to. And so that's what I was saying is we have the data now. We've spent so much time as a digital organization collecting the right kinds of data. Let's not ignore it. So really what we're trying to get down to is understanding what our target audience is and doing the research and analysis. And I think Jim queued that up early on, is that's really a major step that's missing in most testing programs. And again, I think that comes from the popularity and the slickness of what we call conversion rate optimization, or CRO, is that you have this playbook of tests. We have all of these case studies that say, button color or headline placement or hero image size, and these are the things that are going to move the needle for your organization. And that may help give you some ideas of things that you want to test, but it doesn't give you, it shouldn't allow you to skip that very, very important upfront step of doing proper research and analysis. And as we've talked about, that can be really, really hard, but that hard work pays off, because it's what you need to do to really understand your target audience, and then test the things that are going to resonate with your target audience. And again, they're telling you through their behavior where the sticking points are, what things may or may not resonate with them. So leverage that behavioral data that you already have, do the research, and then start doing much more targeted testing based on that.
Yeah, I mean, testing really should be a kind of a cyclical thing where the data informs the tests, the tests result in data that informs future tests, and it's a constantly like an iterative process. I think a lot of times that's forgotten. People are just looking for organizations are just looking for kind of all these quick wins, low hanging fruit. That's always how when people, from what I've seen, when organizations want to start a testing program, let's just start with the low hanging fruit or these quick wins. But you, yeah, it's not really a cookie cutter in most cases. Um, no one has that very generic storefront that's in the demos.
And and
So
and I
really, you
think
need
that's
that
I think that's
data
fine
to
to
inform.
start with, as long as you don't fall into the trap that that's what's going to define our testing program. If that's what you're using to whet everyone's appetite for testing, maybe you're playing with fire a little bit. But I think it's okay to run some more basic testing just to show and highlight what it does. But we also should be open and transparent that those tests probably aren't going to move the needle much. We may see a little gain here or there, but the reality is it's probably going to be within the margin of error. So, it's probably not really moving the needle at all. And even though the testing solution may show a slight lift and may show statistical significance, it's probably not really moving the needle, that much at all. And if it is, it's pure chance. What really matters and what really moves the needle is doing things that are hard. And doing things that are hard is putting the time up front, to do research, to do analysis. That's where you start to really drive some serious gains in your testing program. It's not about kind of hacks, right? And that's kind of how I look at the playbook for CRO, as I see it as kind of like, hacks, like, hack your website for higher conversion. And there's probably white papers and LinkedIn thought pieces about it that are titled that, hack your website for higher conversion. And they'll talk about button color and hero image placement and all those things. But if you seriously want to drive increases in conversion and value out of your testing program, it comes down to really analyzing what your customers need, and the message that resonates with them. And that's not something that you can get from a guide, right? Again, that can point you in the right direction of things that may align with what your customers do, but the only way to get that answer is to put in the hard work and do the research and analysis to determine, what do our customers really need? What language is going to resonate with them? What things are really going to align with the vision that our customers have? Once we have that relevancy, then we're going to start seeing some real big gains in our testing program. And then you can run one or two tests rather than 20 tests. And that those one or two tests are going to far outperform in total those 20 tests that are just not really moving the needle.
Yeah, that's
And that's a
fair.
hard narrative to
And
tell, right? Because the company wants to see action and movement. We need to be busy and run 20 tests, but it's hard for them. It's hard to say, just settle down. We may not run 20 tests. We're going to only run two, but those two are going to be really, really valuable tests.
if we zoom out for a second and slightly or not digress, but evolve the topic, there's another big challenge I don't think we touched upon in terms of optimization that I've seen, which is getting buy-in from the entire organization on it. Whether it's even education, there's optimization going on, or just having everyone on board that's happening. Because I think many times what happens too is optimization starts as trying kind of like from a corner of the organization somewhere, and some group is running some tests, but then at the same time there's like major site releases that could be happening and major functionality launching on the site, major marketing promotions or some events going on, and that just totally can screw up all of the results that you're doing,
Yeah.
simultaneously. So it never works that way. I mean, I think, and that's part of the challenge, is that you kind of need to have organizational buy-in that testing is happening at
You,
least.
you do, but at a minimum, you have to start with someone running your optimization program to realize that those things that you just listed matter. And that's the place you have to start. And I'm not disagreeing with you that having organizational buy-in is important, but even if you don't have organization-wide buy-in, as long as you have someone running your testing program that understands that those things are important, they can at least architect and analyze the results with those things in mind. Today, I would say at least half of the cases out there, that isn't the case. And again, I'm going to put some of the blame on the testing vendors for helping encourage this to happen, is they make the reporting super simple. And I wrote up a blog post a couple weeks ago about, you're doing testing wrong and you're falling victim to p hacking, and I'll link that up in the notes for this article. But the vendors have made the reporting so, I guess, dumbed down is the best way that I can put it, yet so confident, because they kind of back it with these statistical measures that make you feel like this test was absolutely a winner, but they can't know all the answers. And so while I put some of the blame on the vendors for not putting the statistical rigor that is needed into the testing, most of the blame has to be on the person running the optimization program, because the platform can't know everything. And as someone analyzing the test results, they often feel victim to pleasing their boss or filling a quota of number of tests that we need to run, rather than taking a step back and saying, okay, this is going to be really hard. We just ran a test, and now I'm going to have to go figure out what else could be impacting it. I know our marketing team was running a promotion. I know our email team just sent out a massive blast. I know there was like a day where we had some system outages. There was something big going on in in world government. All of those things could impact your results, and you have to take that into consideration as you analyze the data. But again, unfortunately, it's become so mechanized that we launch a test, we open up the visual editor in the program and tweak it, launch it, let it run for a couple days. We get a little badge saying we've reached statistical significance, and then we send out an email saying, hey guys, we've got a winner and we've got lift. Everybody looks like a hero. And it's at best, it's misinformation. It's telling a very incomplete story. At worst, we're costing organizations millions and millions of dollars in either revenue that is not to be realized. So lots of these winners that we're out there evangelizing and saying, wow, we had great lift, that really don't. And if anyone were to go back and actually do the math, they'd start to say, well, wait a minute, why aren't we seeing that extra money in our bottom line? It's like, well, there wasn't really a lift. So, that's the best of the worst case scenario. The worst of the worst is we're actually adopting winners that are actually hurting our lifetime value of our customers, and we're actually costing the companies even more money based on these decisions. I think the good news for optimization people is that companies really aren't coming back around and evaluating the success. They're kind of taking everyone's word for it. The bad news is when that finally falls and someone starts questioning it, a lot of people are going to potentially be really, really angry that for years we've been making conclusions on things that were flat out wrong, and again, at worst, costing companies millions of dollars in lost profits.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, yeah, the results is. I'm glad you brought that up, because they were just getting to the results can be very complicated. I think when we run tests, we rarely ever will just take the platform's word for
Yeah.
it. Well, yep.
Yeah, and that's and to be fair, that's one of the things that I think we were very, very good at early on is two things. Is we always used the data to inform the test, the test roadmaps, the test catalogs. We would spend the time up front with companies to really understand their consumer data and start to say, okay, the data is telling us this is what your customers need, and let's formulate a testing program around those needs. We were also really, really good at not just using the base reporting in any of the optimization platforms that we used, and insisted that our clients integrate with an analytics platform so we could do deeper, richer analysis, so we could take all of these other things into effect. With that said, I think we absolutely have fallen short in the statistical rigor. And I'll pull Matt Gershoff back into the conversation. Matt and I have been friends for many, many years. If you don't if you aren't familiar with him, Matt is the CEO of a optimization product called Conductrix. Um, if Optimizely is the most friendly, easy to use for marketers, Conductrix is on the far opposite end of the spectrum. And I think Matt freely admits that. He says things like, if a company is an Adobe shop, we're not a good fit for them. Their platform is very, very rigorous. He's always pushing the envelope, but he knows that limits his potential audience. And him and I have been talking for years, and it wasn't until just a few months ago that some of the things that he was talking about finally started to resonate with me. And that's what really pushed me to write this blog post on, you're probably doing testing wrong. And that's one of the things that admittedly, we haven't been great at, is thinking about the statistical impact of how we formulated the test. So while the ideation may have been well thought through, while the results analysis may have been well thought through, we were missing that middle piece that from just a pure statistical standpoint, our conclusions may have been wrong because the statistics weren't backing up what we were finding. And so it's really, really complicated. It's really, really hard. And that's just from a kind of technology standpoint, is how all this works, and from a statistical standpoint, that's really, really hard. But we have to understand it's even more complex than that. We have to deal with human emotions and people and politics. And so the person running a testing program in an organization, I think, has a much bigger challenge than the person running the analytics practice. And if we say that being an analyst is hard and you have to piss people off, I think optimization is even that much more difficult. They have so many different facets to manage and balance, and it's not easy. And it's not a sterile scientific lab where we can just run clean tests. That's not the reality. Businesses are messy by their very nature, and so people running testing programs have to figure out how to run the best tests they can in a very messy and opposite of sterile lab, which is their business.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking now another kind of side of this as well, kind of why. I mean, bringing back to Jim's original question, why people may not be that into it, or kind of become become or start out a little bit jaded uh, with optimization. I think similar to how some people probably are with elections. Not to get into politics, but running initial tests and seeing a lot that maybe never reach significance, never have an impact. It might seem like, what's the point of testing to some organizations, and they get kind of turned off by it.
Agreed. They're paying a lot of money. They're
Counter to
paying a lot
that,
of money for these platforms, right? They want to see quick results.
yeah, because you want to see big results. But I think just another mental shift around that idea is that all tests um, are learning opportunities about your customers, even if the in the short term maybe it wasn't a big win. That learning could influence an upcoming test that would result in a big win. So I think that kind of mindset needs to be kept at the
Didn't
forefront
didn't
as well.
Todd say that, Jim, on one of our podcast episodes where he was a guest? So Todd Shaman, who runs testing for Christian Science Monitor, he said something like, "We don't call it a testing program. We call it a learning program," or something like that. Do you remember that conversation, Jim?
Yep, I remember that, and that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, I love the way that he put that. He's like, yeah, we don't call it a testing program. We call our practice a learning program. I thought that was such a really great way to look at it. Because you're right. I mean, if you
Absolutely.
if the goal of your testing program is that every one of your tests that you launch is going to generate a winner with lift over the control, you're going to be sadly disappointed. If we knew that was going to be the case, why do we even need a test, right? Let's just roll out the alternate version we have in mind. We don't need to test it. And so, learning and further refining your testing roadmap is really a great way to look at things. I had a thought and now it totally escaped me, but that was a great point to get in there. But I think John, you brought up another good point is just the cost of these programs. So the software is expensive.
Yeah.
It's getting cheaper. I think the ability to get into it is more accessible at an enterprise level. I think the competition and multiple options available has really helped drive the pricing down. But it's still expensive. Then you have to invest in people. And we have to remember that a testing program isn't just buying a SaaS solution and hiring an optimization strategist. It affects a lot of people, right? You need probably a front end dev to write some jQuery or JavaScript. You probably need someone from creative to create new, mock-ups and collateral. You're most likely going to have legal review because you're changing content and copy on the website. So it's a really expensive endeavor if you think about all of the people that are involved in making tests possible.
Absolutely, and we're talking about for the well-made tests, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the other thing is there is like to all these points. I mean, there's definitely like a high learning curve to running testing, and it's very customized to the particular organization. So that might mean how to interact with the different optimization team members, but it also can relate to ideation, prioritization, the sizing of tests. So a lot of times you'll want to understand, how long a test might be
Yes.
live for.
Yes.
But there's variables that go into that formula that
There
you're
are.
going to be very bad at the beginning because you don't know.
And the platforms do not help you with that other than, and I'm going to put a plug in for Conductrix, they build the sizing in up front into how you design your tests. The other platforms do not.
Hmm,
Adobe actually has a really, really nice calculator for helping you size it. But it's hidden in their documentation. It's not built into the UI. It's actually a really good calculator, and you kind of put in the variables and pull the levers to determine, what threshold of type 1 and type 2 errors you're willing to live with, what kind of the sizing looks like, and it helps you determine both size of your tests and runtime in order to get to a level of significance that can be statistically proven and or disproven. Or Gershoff's gonna get on me for using the wrong terms here. Side note, Jim, let's get Matt Gershoff on a future episode ASAP. I hope he'll join us. That will be a fun one. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and again, that's where I think the popular solutions in our space have removed that from the workflow because it makes it more difficult, and it exposes that tests probably have to run longer than you think they need to run, and it removes this idea that you have a budget. Your budget is the time and the number of people that you can put into your testing, and if we remove that calculation from view, we can pretend it doesn't exist. Therefore, we can cycle through tests a lot faster. So man, there are just so many different facets to it, and we're probably just touching on the tip of the iceberg here. But hopefully, we've helped kind of tell a narrative of why this is really really complicated. And again, from a results standpoint, why it's so important to take the time to shape these things properly, because we're in a very very powerful position to have impact on a business, and that's the idea behind optimization programs. But we have to understand that if we're doing it wrong, and this goes far beyond the results that are shown in the interface of our favorite testing platform, if we're doing it wrong, we can actually be causing some very real harm to the businesses that we've been hired to help.
absolutely. I
Hmm.
think there's one other factor too that I'm thinking about. Sorry, I'm just kind of throwing things out there, but I think to some degree, and it might not be as prominent, but maybe it is, or maybe it's somewhat hidden. But I think there's always some sort of inherent fear of optimization as well, because because in some cases, while we can judge winners, the ones that don't have an impact, like so, what if there's a lot of resources on this huge internal endeavor, uh, for some new site functionality. it's tested, and it turns out there's really no impact to the bottom line. That could someone could jump to the conclusion that that was a wasted effort, for instance, or and I think sometimes optimization programs can highlight those things. So I think that's subconsciously, at least, some might fear that aspect of optimization as well. Whereas if
Absolutely.
we weren't testing or weren't measuring that closely, then everyone always applauds the effort. But
The theater makes us feel good, right?
yeah,
And if that's the aim and that's the goal, and maybe and we're running tests that don't really matter, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay that we're just making ourselves feel good. But I think if organizations are truly interested in using this as a strategic advantage over their competitors, the only way to do it is to put in the hard work. Otherwise, it's just you're just kind of playing in a sandbox, and hopefully you're just not doing that much harm to the business, and hope otherwise you're just not really moving the needle, but you feel good about it, and maybe that's okay. But again,
absolutely.
if you really want to make a difference, you've got to put in the hard work, and it's tremendously difficult. I think it begs for having a really, really strong leader in an optimization role, because it's a very tough role to be in. But if you have the right leader in that role that has the technical understanding, that has the statistical rigor and background, that understands how to navigate the political waters, and can help highlight the value of any test, because it's a learning opportunity. We're learning every time we test something. We're learning more about what our consumers want, our customers need, where their pain points are, and that is never a loss. If we're gaining knowledge and we're learning more and we're being able to better target our product and positioning, that has to be a win. And so I think, again, that comes down to the importance of having really strong leadership in that optimization role. Unfortunately, I think hiring in digital analytics in general is really, really lacking. Companies really struggle with how to hire. So what ends up happening is they hire a manager or director of analytics. There's an 80% chance that that person's background is in implementation, in administration of a tool set. They kind of get pushed into the role of analyst begrudgingly, and then before they know it, they're now an optimization strategist, and they're just so far out of their element. It's really important to hire the right people for these roles and invest in people. And this kind of goes back to a topic that we have hammered to death, but is so critically important, that all the great tools in the world, at least today, maybe that changes in the future with AI and whatever the hot new trends are, but today you need people to make those tools work and to be valuable. And you can't just go drop a ton of money on a cloud suite and expect it just to work, and without hiring the right people. And a lot of times that's multiple people. That's not just hiring a good implementer that you think is going to be a great analyst, that's going to be a world-class optimization strategist. Rarely exists.
Yep. And I wanted to kind of highlight one of the points you just mentioned too, which was just that you really need to use the learnings from optimization. And I think once those are kind of cycled into the 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 workflow of the entire organization, that I mean, well-run optimization programs can be a very powerful thing. And I think in those cases, which are rare still, but like in those cases, um, I think everyone gets excited about it. So it's just kind of getting to that state. Um, to kind of go back to the original question of this, or the original topic of this of our conversation. I think a lot of times people don't seem that excited about it because they never really got to that enlightened state of
Right.
optimization.
Right. Yeah, and that comes down to positioning, and again, the vendors are going to position it one way that's not necessarily the right way for the best long-term value of the program, right? Their job is to sell the software. It's someone in your company's job to help set that message right. And if you don't have that person, hire the right outside expertise to help you build out that. There's lots of really, really good agencies out there that can help stand up optimization practices. So don't feel like you're somehow less or losing if you go that route, because definitely hiring the right guide that's been there before can help put you way ahead of your competitors. So, that's an option that should absolutely be evaluated. And again, there's lots of really good agencies out there that can help move that program forward faster than you could alone. I think we've kind of come full circle and really touched on a lot of key things. Again, I would love to have a follow up. I think Matt Gershoff from Conductrix would be a fantastic guest. If someone from Optimizely or Adobe would want to come on, I would be more than happy to have them come on and challenge me on some of my thoughts that I think that they share some of the blame for making this look too easy, and get their side of the story. I'd be absolutely open to that. I think this is one of those topics that really deserves a few follow-up episodes to drill into additional details, because there's a lot of value to be gained here. And again, I think there's a lot of education, ourselves included, that need to happen in order for all of us collectively to get to the level that we need when we're dealing with something that is so important. And again, I think we need to be really careful here. As just as an analyst, we have a duty to slice with our analytical knife very carefully. Even more so for the optimization strategist. We have a huge duty to do right by the customers, by the population we're testing on, and ultimately the business that we represent, that we're doing with this with the utmost care. And I think a lot of times it's just out of ignorance that we aren't. And so the more that we can help shine a light on that and at least start the conversation, I think we would all benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. I agreed. We definitely need to have some follow-ups. And the one topic I'd like to dig into more is selling the organization on the methodical testing approach, because you hit it time and time again, where a lot of times organizations look at the testing program and measure its success based on movement. So it's movement for the sake of movement. That's how it's managed, instead of movement to learn or movement to improve. So that's definitely something I'd like to dig into. And how do you sell your organization on that, on not counting success based on the number of tests run, but what is actually the result of the tests that are run.
For sure. So let's schedule some follow-ups. Let's reach out and see if we can get some guests on. I think this is a really important topic, and I think one that is hopefully really interesting for people to listen to. John, any last thoughts, wrap up from you?
No, I think we touched on a lot of things. I think the big thing is just that, at least I didn't mean to come off sounding against optimization at all. I mean, I love optimization. We all love optimization, but I think the key point is really just it's a very difficult thing to be good at, and it's one of those things that you never actually reach that utopian point, but you're trying to always kind of go closer and closer. But it can be a very powerful thing, and I'm really looking forward to these follow-ups too, to really talk through some of these um, unintended positives that come from optimization as well, throughout the organization. Yep.
Cool. Great topic, Jim. A really good conversation, guys. And it turned out that a early morning podcast maybe wasn't such a bad idea. I think it.
I was thinking that about halfway through. You kind of came in worried that recording earlier than normal might throw things off. Meanwhile, you were spitting fire all day.
Awesome. Yeah. No, it was good. Maybe this is our new norm. Early morning recordings. At least for me. I don't know, what time is it in Thailand, John?
Well, now it's about 10 p.m., but in a few weeks I'm going to be in California, and then I don't know if I'm going to agree with your early morning.
Right. Fair enough. Because it's going to be even earlier for you. So.
So. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Great conversation as always.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. See ya. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to reach us, you could do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at www.33sticks.com. The 33 Tangents podcast is a production of 33 Sticks.